On the show this week, Yunus loses final battle in court. Bangladesh Supreme Court rules in favor of his ouster as Grameen chief. Unease continues in Pak-US relations. Pakistan takes serious offense to US assessment that it's not serious in the war against terror. Afghans launch massive protests condemning US pastors' action. Many die in violence even as President Hamid Karzai denounced the incident. The Indian government bows to public pressure, agrees to implement the Lokpal bill. Anna Hazare withdraws his fast. It's a U-turn for UK Prime Minister David Cameron, pledges massive monetary support for Pakistan to amend rift in ties. Hello and welcome to Week Gone By, the show where we give you an in-depth view of what happened in South Asia throughout last 1 week. I'm Indrajit. Also on the show, we will be joined by senior journalist from India, Pranay Sharma, giving us a view of the agitation that's taking place in New Delhi. Also, Nadim Kadir would be joining us from Bangladesh and giving us his perspective on all the top stories from Bangladesh. The week started on a disturbing note in Bangladesh. Violent clashes marked the dawn-to-dusk hartal call given by the Islamic Law Implementation Committee in Bangladesh on Monday.
Tension in the air. Protests on streets. Clash of ideas and clash of logic. Violence erupted as police in Bangladesh clashed with protesters on Monday this week. Dozens were arrested, many injured, as police used tear gas and batons to disperse the crowd. The violence came as the hardline Islami Oiko Jot, a coalition of Islamic groups, enforced a nationwide general strike on Monday. Their demand: government to institute Islamic law and scrap policies aimed at giving women equal rights to property, employment and education. Thousands of riot police fanned out across Dhaka. They laid barbed wire fences to cordon off the country's main Baitul Mukarram mosque.
যখন 11:30 মিনিট যখন হয় প্রথম গরম পানি দেওয়া হলো পরপর গ্যাস এরপরই বুলেট এরপরে লাঠিচার্জ আমাদের ছেলেরা কোনো উস্কানিমূলক তাদেরকে কোনো কথাবার্তাও না কোনো হামলাও না বিনা উস্কানিতে আক্রমণ আমাদের মিনিমাম 50 জন ছেলে কমপক্ষে আহত হয়েছে
Bangladesh has a secular legal system, but in matters relating to inheritance, it follows Sharia law, which means women to only claim a quarter of the inheritance men get from their parents. Government is not attempting to change inheritance as per Sharia. They have only talked about equal rights in terms of earning. The Women's Development Policy is one which promises equality in terms of education and empowerment. Still, many found that against their religion. Thus came the protest, the outrage. But interestingly, there were hardly any women taking part in the protest. Questions now arise: does religion only belong to men? Do men only have the right to show respect towards their religion? Article 25 of the new Women's Development Policy calls for equality for women in terms of empowerment and earning. The policy, however, does not call for equality in inheritance, which is as per Sharia anyway. Therefore, the hartal was misrepresented to the public. The Prime Minister, however, insists the new rules do not hurt Islam. She accuses the hardline group behind the unrest. Hasina finds it as a deliberate attempt by some unscrupulous elements to play with people's religious feelings to destabilize the country. Although the hardline religious parties do not have major political influence, experts believe their campaign to portray some of the government's policies as anti-Islamic could have an impact on rural areas of the country in the long term. The impact was for sure felt on Monday.
But the news that continued to dominate headlines in Bangladesh throughout the week is the ouster of Mohammed Yunus as Managing Director of Grameen Bank. Professor Yunus finally lost his battle this Tuesday at the Supreme Court. Here's exactly what happened.
In 2006, Mohammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of his pioneering work in the fight against poverty through the microcredit system. It has so far been the crowning achievement of his career, until this year. Yet only 5 years after winning the award, Professor Yunus has been ignominiously removed from his job as Managing Director of the Grameen Bank, the bank he created. His final battle against the central bank's order at the High Court, dismissing him from his current capacity, ended this week at the doors of the Supreme Court. To his dismay, Supreme Court rejected his plea on Tuesday, April 5, 2011. The High Court last month upheld the central bank decision and said that he overstayed in violation of bank law. The official retirement age for managing directors of commercial banks in Bangladesh is 60. Mohammad Yunus is now 70 years old. Immediately, questions were raised about the credibility of the decision, with people asking one question: is age the real bar? So what prompted his spectacular fall from grace? Experts say part of the answer lies in the character of the man, who evokes strong emotions in Bangladesh. Admirers see him as someone who has arguably done more than any other individual in the developing world to lead the fight against poverty. But critics see him as a person who brooks no criticism of his management style, someone who fell victim to his own vanity by ill-advisedly trying to set up a political party. In 2007, Professor Yunus was revered in Bangladesh for winning the Nobel Prize. He had, up until then, mostly stayed clear of politics, apart from occasionally joining aid agencies and non-governmental organizations to call for better governance in his home country. In January that year, he was reportedly approached by the military to head a caretaker government with a view to becoming the new Prime Minister. He later recommended the former head of the Bangladeshi Central Bank, Fakhruddin Ahmed, for the job. Soon afterwards, Professor Yunus decided to form his own political party, in a move which even his most ardent supporters have described as a huge miscalculation. His critics denounced him. He soon realized for himself it was a bad idea when the small support base he had for his party evaporated within hours. The move into politics was rapidly aborted, but it came too late to pacify some of his critics. The Nobel laureate was under attack since late last year after a Norwegian documentary alleged the bank was dodging taxes. Yunus has denied any financial irregularities, and the Norwegian government found no evidence of misuse of funds or corruption. Mohammad Yunus is highly lauded abroad by politicians and financiers. Thus, many like the United States and France have lamented his disgraceful exit. French President Nicolas Sarkozy has said his government will monitor developments and discuss the issue with Bangladesh in the next few days. The US, on the other hand, has warned Professor Yunus's removal could harm bilateral ties between Washington and Dhaka. Meanwhile, there's a strong rumor that there are negotiations going on between government representatives and Professor Yunus, which will effectively work towards an acceptable reconciliation. Maybe it's time Bangladesh settles down its troubled and divided opinion on the professor soon, in order to keep the West from getting involved deep in the controversy.
Let's get a perspective now from Bangladesh. We are now joined by Nadim Kadir, senior journalist. Mr. Kadir, how do you think this will affect the future of Grameen Bank in the country?
Being a journalist, there are options, how to run a bank. The government has specific laws, and one of the law is, which the Professor Yunus is fighting, is the age limit. So after other banks have had their managing directors changed. So obviously, if Professor Yunus is not there, there will be another person to lead the bank. And as I told you before, that when I spoke to the US Secretary of State, he had made a proposal that it can be a person who is acceptable to both Professor Yunus as well as the government, and he will run the bank. So I don't see any reason why the future of the Grameen Bank, or for that any matter, why its operations will be affected. A different man may change some of the modus operandi of the bank, but it's basic. The credit to the poor will continue.
Mr. Qadir, Mohammed Yunus is highly lauded abroad by many. Although Bangladesh government has said that this should not affect its relation with foreign countries, especially the US, what is the reality? Do you think there can be long-term ramifications of this issue?
No, I really don't think so. I really don't think so. You know, the issue-to-issue based things, and it's basically the American government and the French government which made some comments about the decision that the government made on Professor Yunus. But he lost the matter also in the court. And he has asked the court for a review, the highest court. So I think, you know, you have to respect the law, whoever you are. From a common citizen to a Nobel laureate, it's very important that you respect the law. Let's see what the court has to say. And for foreign relations with Bangladesh, the American ambassador only day before yesterday said that relations with Bangladesh was extremely good and strong, and they were working together for a long time, and they're continuing to do so in many areas, including terrorism. So for an individual, if you think that relations between Washington and Dhaka or Paris and Dhaka will be affected, I don't think so. And the government also has made it very clear that its relations with any country in the world, maybe Washington had a view, especially US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is a personal friend of Professor Yunus, so she had a concern about her friend. From France also, he has many friends there, so they had a concern. So that was only communicated, but it doesn't mean that you simply go on a long-term situation where the relations do not work out. So I don't really think so. It's a very momentary thing, and I'm telling you also that it's today also Dr. Yunus talked with some of the very senior journalists here in Bangladesh, and Professor Yunus told them that he was worried about Grameen Bank if he's not there, but he has to explain what is his worry, because other banks are being run but with the managing directors being changed, and there are other NGOs which also give away microcredits. Their leadership changes. So what is so special that he cannot move out of Grameen Bank? For me personally, I don't think there should be any problem. So as far as relations or Professor Yunus or the government, I think these are very different issues.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Qadir, for joining in from Bangladesh and giving us that perspective.